Imagine for a moment that you are already gone, that every ambition you hold, every person you love, every version of yourself you cling to has already been lost. Not as a tragedy, but as a simple, indisputable fact of existence. There is a deep and unsettling silence that follows this realization. And within that silence, there is a freedom so profound and absolute that it changes the very nature of action itself. This is not a metaphor for despair, but the core of the most radical psychological technology ever devised by the warrior mind. It is the Bushido maxim whispered for centuries: to live as if already dead. Our story begins not in feudal Japan, but in a modern city, with a man named Kenji. Kenji lived a life of quiet, persistent anxiety. He was a skilled architect, yet every presentation was a battlefield of his own making, his mind clouded by visions of failure and ridicule. His personal relationships were strained by a constant need to manage how others perceived him. Kenji's life was a meticulously constructed fortress, built to protect a fragile sense of self from the inevitable disappointments of the world. He was, in every sense, a prisoner of his own potential loss. His story is ours. We build identities like fortresses, and we become the terrified guards stationed at their walls, forever watching for threats to our status, our relationships, our very sense of who we are. Chapter 1. The Misunderstood Maxim. To confront Kenji's prison, we must first travel to the warring states period of Japan, to the essence of Bushido. The principle is often translated starkly: the warrior lives as though already dead. To the modern ear, this sounds morbid, nihilistic, a celebration of oblivion. This is the first and greatest misunderstanding. The samurai did not romanticize death. They performed a relentless psychological operation on their own minds. Yamamoto Tsunetomo in the Hagakure wrote that, "The way of the samurai is found in death." He did not mean to seek it foolishly, but to resolve it inwardly, completely, ahead of time. By accepting the worst possible outcome as a certainty, the warrior was not defeated by it. He was liberated from its haunting power. Consider Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary sword saint. Facing dozens of duels to the death, his writings in the Dokudo are not the ravings of a fatalist, but the calm instructions of a mind utterly undisturbed. His first precept: accept everything just the way it is. This acceptance is not passive resignation. It is the active, deliberate shedding of the desperate hope that reality will conform to your wishes. When Musashi stepped onto the dueling ground, he had already, in the deepest chamber of his psyche, accepted his own demise. This was not a lack of will to live, but the removal of a paralyzing filter, the filter of fear. His body and technique could then operate with a clarity and precision that his fear-bound opponents could not comprehend. Chapter 2. The Internal Duel. Let us return to Kenji, standing outside the boardroom before his most important presentation. His heart is a drum, his palms are damp. The internal duel has already begun. His opponent is not the executives inside, but the phantoms of his own mind, the phantom of humiliation, the phantom of professional ruin, the phantom of an identity shattered by failure. He is fighting a shadow war to preserve a self-image, and in doing so, he is draining the very energy and focus needed to perform the task at hand. This is the universal human condition. We are all engaged in this internal duel, sacrificing our presence to the defense of a fragile ego. The samurai understood that this internal duel is the only one that matters. To win the external battle, you must first end the internal one, and there is only one way to end it: complete surrender. Not surrender to the external opponent, but surrender to the truth of the outcome. The psychological technology is this: you must walk into that boardroom as Kenji, but you must have already buried him. You must have sat in the quiet of your own mind and witnessed the entire sequence: the stumbling words, the cold stares, the rejection, the career setback, the loss of status. You must have let the wave of that imagined future crash over you, and you must have found yourself still breathing on the other side of it. Chapter 3. The Ritual of Release. This is not mere positive thinking. It is a conscious, deliberate ritual of release. It is the practice of memento mori. Remember you must die, applied not just to life, but to every moment of consequence. For the samurai, this was a daily meditation. For Kenji, it becomes a practical mental framework. He pauses in the hallway. He closes his eyes for a single breath. And he says to himself, silently, "It is already done. I have already failed. That man, Kenji the anxious architect, is already gone. What remains is simply a consciousness that will walk into that room and express the ideas, pure and unadorned, without any need for them to be received in any particular way. The need is what poisons action. The ritual of release severs the need. When Kenji opens the door and begins to speak, something has shifted. The desperate edge is gone from his voice. His body is no longer braced for a blow. He is no longer delivering a performance to extract validation. He is simply explaining the architecture with the calm clarity of one who has nothing left to protect. This is the freedom that lies on the other side of surrender. The executives are not met with a plea, but with presence. They are not being sold to. They are being communicated with. And in that space, true connection and persuasion become possible. The outcome is now irrelevant to his sense of self. Paradoxically, this makes a successful outcome far more likely. Chapter 4. The unshakable ground. This state of being is what the Zen masters, who deeply influenced Bushido, called the immovable mind. It is a mind that is not tossed by the winds of gain and loss, praise and blame. It is a mind grounded not in the shifting sands of circumstance, but in the bedrock of accepted reality. Action stemming from this ground is inherently perfect, not because it is always successful, but because it is uncorrupted. It is action free from the distortion of desire and aversion. The warrior who has accepted death does not fight recklessly. He fights with a terrifying, efficient calm, because his technique is no longer compressed by the tension of self-preservation. Apply this to every arena of a modern life. The difficult conversation you dread, the artistic project you are too afraid to begin, the vulnerability required in love. In each case, the suffering is in the resistance to the potential pain of the outcome. By psychologically living through the loss, the rejection, the criticism, the heartbreak, before it even happens, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer a hostage to possibility. Your action becomes a pure expression, a statement made into the void, rather than a transaction with the world. This is the ultimate form of integrity. Your actions are aligned with your intention and nothing else. Chapter 5. The Life of No Regret. The Hagakure states that with this resolution settled, one can fulfill one's duties without error. This is the life of no regret. Not a life of perfection, but a life where every action is taken with the full weight of your being, unclouded by the second-guessing that fear manufactures. Kenji, having tasted this freedom in the boardroom, begins to apply it in smaller doses. He speaks a difficult truth to a friend. Having first accepted the loss of that friendship, he begins a personal creative project, having first accepted that it may be unseen and unappreciated. In each case, the action itself becomes lighter, truer, and more powerful. The final barrier is the understanding that this is not a one-time achievement, but a daily, moment-to-moment practice. The ego, the sense of a separate self to be protected, is a persistent ghost. It will return. The practice is to continually perform the ritual of release, to see the clinging arise, and to consciously let the imagined self die again. Over time, the identity itself begins to soften. You are less of a fixed thing to be defended, and more of a flowing process, a conscious presence engaging with the world. This is the quiet culmination. A life lived not in avoidance of death, but in such intimate acquaintance with it that every moment is infused with a profound and poignant vitality. To live as if already dead is to disarm the tyranny of the future. It is to stop living in the hypothetical shadow of tomorrow's loss and to stand completely in the undeniable reality of this present moment. The samurai did not cultivate this philosophy to become better killers, but to become utterly alive in the face of the finite. They sought the freedom to act with perfect clarity, unburdened by the tremors of a protecting heart. For us, the battlefields have changed, but the internal enemy remains the same. It is the fear that corrupts our actions and shrinks our lives. The solution is not to build stronger walls, but to realize deeply that there was never anything inside them that needed protection. There is only the work to be done, the truth to be spoken, and the life to be lived, freely, fully, and without apology, now. What you have learned today is not a historical curiosity, but a functional lens through which to view your own life. You have learned that the greatest limitations are often the prisons we build in our own minds, designed to protect a fragile sense of self. The principle of living as if already dead is a key to those prison doors. It is the practice of preemptive acceptance, a psychological technique to sever the chain that binds your actions to your fear of outcomes. By internalizing this, you move from a state of reaction, governed by anxiety over loss, to a state of clear, intentional action, governed by purpose alone. The question I leave you with is this: in what one area of your life are you currently the most guarded, the most protective of a specific outcome? How would your next action in that arena change if you had already psychologically accepted the worst-case scenario as a certainty? I am deeply curious to read your reflections in the comments below. Your insights not only enrich your own understanding, but create a space for others to learn alongside you. If this exploration of a deeper way of being has resonated with you, if you feel a pull toward this kind of clarity and discipline, then I invite you to join this ongoing conversation. Your subscription is a signal for more journeys into the philosophies that untangle the complexities of the modern mind. For now, I thank you. Thank you for your time, your attention, and for walking this path of inquiry to its end. Until the next one, remain present.